We have items 95, 96, and 97, which is the new shelter. Is there a motion to approve items 95, 96, and 97? Councilmember Renteria makes a motion. Is there a second? Councilmember Kitchen seconds that motion. We have some people. No, I'm going to call speakers. I just wanted to get the item on the floor. Absolutely. No, that's okay. We just have the item now on the floor. We have a couple people that have signed up to speak on this item. I'm going to call them up and give them a chance to speak. Let's pull up Constance Bethany. While you're coming down, is Henri Damas here? You'll be up next.
We're all together. We're all part of the same group. We come to all at once.
Okay. We can come up to the podium, and as people leave the podium, you can come up either way. Go ahead.
Henri can go first if he wants, if that's allowed.
That's allowed. You have 3 minutes, sir.
So we represent we're in District 3, Mr. Renteria. I just have a few comments to make on this item. My name is Henri Dalmas. I am a resident of the 28-acre Timber Ridge Townhomes and Condominiums community, as well as president of the Homeowners Association. Mark here is the vice president, and Connie is one of our board members. So we all have the same thought on this process. I will speak, and they can add their own commentary as necessary. What I'm concerned with, of course, is the purchase of the Rodeway Inn that you all are considering. After consulting with local businesses and residents, I've concluded that the City of Austin's outreach to the District 3 community has been either ineffective or absent. That's the way we feel. The business owners and residents of the surrounding areas feel they have not had a say-so in this matter. They have had no voice. I found out about this proposal on Tuesday, November 12th, from a neighbor via word of mouth who heard it from a businessman due to the presence of the Austin CBS news crew in the area filming. I am in vehement disagreement with the City of Austin's decision to entertain purchasing the Rodeway Inn and convert it into a homeless shelter. While I am sensitive to the plight of the homeless, placing a homeless shelter in this site, the site of the Rodeway Inn, is a bad idea for reasons the City of Austin may not have considered. I would like to address these reasons now. Firstly, there is the serious matter of the Park West Inn, which is mere 100 yards away. It is a known nest of drug dealing and prostitution. Austin PD is well aware of this crime hub, but the City of Austin council members may not realize that it is that close to this area under consideration. To bring additional homeless into this area, or at least to focus them into this particular area, is to bring people who are battling drug addiction and to exacerbate the local crime problem. This will do a disservice to many of the homeless being brought in by bringing them to a location with ready access to drugs. One can readily observe the comings and goings of the people at Park West Inn and classify them as drug dealers, prostitutes, pimps, and two types of homeless: those who do drugs and those who are recruited to further distribute drugs to other homeless. To bring additional homeless into this area means to expand the influence of this crime nest. Yesterday, I was speaking to a businessman. We had a CBS News crew come and interview us. I was on the TV yesterday. While I was there being interviewed, I saw crime activity in progress, just right there, and plain view of the Rodeway Inn. So it's just interesting that, and the camera crew could not film because they were interviewing me. They wanted to turn their cameras to the actual crimes in progress. Anyway, I just thought that was an interesting point. The second thing I want to bring into consideration is the economic impact. Our area is growing economically, but this homeless shelter will impact this growth negatively. As an example, our Timber Ridge community, which is just 150 yards away, has been working for a dozen years to proactively enhance the value of these townhomes and condominiums. Okay. This year, the Timber Ridge community embarked upon a multi-million-dollar project to complete the renovation of all remaining buildings in its complex.
Sir, your 3 minutes is
Okay,
expired,
thank you.
but the other people can speak now. You can give him your time. You have 2 minutes then.
Thank you. I will conclude shortly. So I'm talking about the economic impact. It's reasonable to expect the exodus of businesses and homeowners from this community for reasons similar to my own. It is reasonable to conclude that the decision by the City of Austin will have a negative economic impact on the surrounding businesses and communities and will stifle or halt the economic dynamism and growth. I am in plain view of this facility that is proposed. If I see a homeless shelter there, I will be motivated to leave. And I represent people that want to make this area better. To put this homeless shelter there is going to have a negative impact. There's a businessman right there who's already told me, if you put this place there, I'm leaving. He has a really nice business. He's auto detailing. He's going to leave. He's trying to buy the business next door. He's not going to do that now. If the City of Austin considers purchasing the Park West Inn, then I would also consider that you purchase the Motel 6 and the Park West Inn, the Motel 6, and the Rodeway Inn. All three of these places are places that have a lot of crime, and they're all right next to each other. All three. You're only dealing with one here. If you're going to do one, you should do all three, or at least deal with the whole problem together. Treat it organically, because they are all connected. So if there's anything more you guys want to add.
Thank you. You have 3 minutes.
Also, the proposed homeless shelter is very close to Linder Elementary, Travis High School. There's a preschool at the Korean Baptist Church, and it's close to St. Edward's University. Young adults from Travis will walk across I-35, and also children going to Linder Elementary. It's also very close to the Mabel Davis Park, which has a swimming pool and a skate park. And also, it is bad for the homeless because there's not any grocery stores in the immediate area. There's not any pharmacies. There's not any hospitals close by. I'm also an EMT, and when the homeless are strung out on drugs like K2, they're disoriented, and there will be more fatalities because it is right next to I-35, and there's already a high number of homeless that are killed by crossing I-35. And I give my other time to the other speakers.
Okay, you have 3 minutes.
Okay. I just wanted to speak primarily to the crime that we've experienced in this area. I moved to this complex. I'm with Henri. I'm the vice president of the HOA there, and I've been there since 2014. In that time, we have had countless break-ins into the homes, car thefts, drive-by shootings, our mail being stolen and vandalized. All of this has been primarily homeless activity. We've spoke to APD on numerous occasions. They've confirmed this, that this is homeless activity in our area. It is mostly driven by the drug trade that's going on in our area. And we actually see the police sitting out front of our unit just watching for these drug deals happen. And by bringing in this homeless population, that is just going to explode. As Henri mentioned, we've already put in $2.5 million to improve our property, and we just feel this is going to tear apart the value of our homes and bring down the community completely. Do you have anything to add to that?
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much for coming down. Is Matt Malika here? Mr. Malika, you have 3 minutes.
Morning, Council. Thank you for the time. I'm here as the Executive Director of the Ending Community Homelessness Coalition, and we're for the purchase of the Rodeway Inn to help people experiencing homelessness here in our community. It's our belief that the supportive services provided in the space will help the residents of the Rodeway Inn navigate the neighborhood and sort of alleviate some of the concerns we've heard previous to this. We're looking to bring in both case management services, clinical case management services, primary care services, substance treatment services, and access to those services will be available to all the residents at the hotel and also to other community members that may need them. I think it's an important discussion to have, and I'm glad that the speakers previous to me came up and expressed their concerns. I think that it goes a long way to addressing some of the NIMBYism that occurs when in regard to people experiencing homelessness. I believe everybody deserves a dignified place to sleep and being inside, and we believe hotels is a good step towards that. With council approval, I can assure the people in that community that the support needed for people experiencing homelessness, they'll be moving inside, will be present, will be active in that community, and I'd be happy to be available to the neighborhood association there to answer any questions or have discussions about how the services might be provided. So thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Mayor,
Yes.
I like.
Councilor Ortega. Mr. Walika.
Also, can you also explain to the neighborhoods that there's not going to be camping or people loitering outside?
Sure. So, yeah, I think one of the primary misconceptions is that people will show up to the hotel to access rooms in the space. ECHO will be very involved with the service providers in the community around creating referral pathways into the Rodeway Inn, the hotel. So referrals into that space won't come on site. Services on site will be provided to those that are living in the space. It won't be a space that'll be for people to congregate, and you won't gain access to the space by showing up there. So there'll be no reason for someone to come and camp or be in that area at all, other than if they are there already. And if they are there already, I think that we're looking at these spaces as being ways to help alleviate some of the camping and some of the people experiencing homelessness that are unsheltered in those communities. So it might be that they would be good candidates to be inside in that space.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Walika. Those are the speakers. Conversations on the dais. Councilmember Kitchen.
Mr. City Manager, perhaps you could also speak to the changes we made in the ordinance with regard to areas around shelters.
Sure, Councilmember. As the changes that were made most recently in October allows the city manager to designate those shelters and provide additional restrictions that would be placed upon them. So if this were to move forward, we would have those considerations as well.
I understand the ordinance to say that there is no camping allowed within approximately a quarter mile, and that that our staff is tasked with designating those areas. Am I understanding that correctly?
That's correct.
Okay. And I understand that the ordinance also sets out a process for city manager to go through to put that ban in place. Is that right?
That's correct. That would be a similar process that we use for the arch as well.
Okay. And my understanding is that goes along with what Councilmember Renteria was saying, that this would not be operated as a drop-in place, and it's also not to be a place where people can camp around it.
That's correct.
Right. Okay.
Councilor Tovo.
I have some questions for staff and then some comments. I wanted to ask and just confirm my understanding from the memo is that any lease or service agreement for the operations of this development will come back to council for approval.
Mayor and Council, Rodney Gonzalez, Assistant City Manager. Yes, you are correct. Any lease or service agreement would have to come back to council.
Great, thank you. And I'd like to provide some direction, Manager, that when that lease agreement comes back to council, well in advance of that, in fact, as early as you can provide it, if you can, please get us some information about estimated costs of renovation for that, estimated costs of services, so that we can have a realistic understanding of what the expenses are that are associated with operating this in the way that we intend to, which is to make sure that all of the individuals who are living there are being provided with services that help them find permanent housing And if the intention is to convert it into permanent housing, then I need a better understanding, as I mentioned on Tuesday, I need a better understanding of what the costs are associated with converting this to units that would include a kitchen facility so that individuals could live there permanently. And so that is I think, essential that the council be provided with that information as soon as possible. I appreciate the examples from other areas. I really need to kind of drill down with whoever is responsible for compiling those and understand, there were estimates for some of them. It's not clear to me whether some of them are operating as shelter or whether they converted also from emergency shelter to permanent supportive housing, and if so, what the costs were associated with that conversion, what the costs associated with services are, the age of construction, all of those things I think are important to us, again, assessing what kinds of costs we will be looking at with this new model. I support the new model, but we have not begun to really delve into the details associated with how to make that work really successful for some of our most vulnerable Austinites. So those are a couple of the requests I would make. Two, with those models, it's not clear to me if they did convert from shelter to permanent supportive housing and required a renovation, if residents were able to stay there during that process. And if not, how are we contemplating undertaking that process here in Austin? Would we use it and then ask everyone to leave and then convert it? And so, Manager 2, as we move forward in investigating and exploring and moving forward with this model, I would ask our real estate department to really look at these examples, help us all better understand them, and then I think we need to determine whether it's wise to seek out properties that already have those kitchenette amenities, or to do that renovation up front rather than use it as an operational facility and then undertake a renovation that's going to require the potential displacement of those residents. And then lastly, as I mentioned on Tuesday, this is just over the border of District 9. District 9 goes east of the interstate at Oldtorf, and so that's just immediately north of this area. It also, District 9 extends down west of 35, right across. I have heard from constituents as well, and I appreciate their involvement in it, and I would ask that anybody who is doing that kind of stakeholder engagement make sure that you're reaching out to South River City citizens and the East Riverside contact team, which represents that area, because this is really, I would regard as on the borderline of those two council districts, and I want to make sure that all of the surrounding neighbors are involved in those conversations and can have an opportunity to have their questions answered. And to those of you who came today or have been writing, including some of my own constituents, I was not aware of the crime in this area. I am concerned by it and believe that you have a right to have a safe neighborhood, and it's my hope that the city's involvement and ownership of that property will really be an improvement in that area. I think that we'll be able to provide a level of safety that it sounds like doesn't exist. I appreciate you raising attention about the other two properties in that area as well. I want to be careful that we're not equating individuals who are experiencing homelessness with that crime. I think no one deserves to live in a neighborhood with an active drug market, and so I hope that our manager is going to prioritize making sure that we are addressing that issue just as quickly as possible, both for your safety and quality of life, as well as for the individuals who will be living in this new property that will be city-owned. So thanks again for your work on this. And again, I think we have more conversations ahead of us, and I would like to have them well in advance of when that lease agreement comes back.
Understood.
Councilor Alter.
Thank you. I want to echo particularly the last point that Councilmember Tovo raised so eloquently. Nobody deserves to live in an area that has a drug market going on, and I would also like to ask the city manager to make sure that we're doing everything we can to address that situation. And I will just point that as we're having these conversations about the hotel conversions, I'm learning more about some situations that are going on in motels in our city that I was not aware of that raised some concerns to me. This also came up in the gun violence task force, that the data is showing that the gun violence is happening very in close proximity to these hotels. And so there may be some opportunities to be addressing multiple goals that we have through addressing these, as well as addressing the needs in the neighborhoods. And I don't know if we've had a sustained look at those as particular areas that need some focused attention in the future. So I'd like us to consider that. I wanted to ask what we know about who's staying in this hotel right now. I know there are some motels where folks are using those motels to keep from becoming homeless, and that's where they're living because these are sometimes less expensive. Do we have a sense of whether we would be displacing folks in this process who are using that particular hotel to live?
Alex Gale, interim officer for the Office of Real Estate Services. I actually don't have that data right now, but we can work on getting that to you.
Well, I would hope that before we would sign a contract, if we're trying to address our homeless situation, that we would be very clear to know that we're not just creating more of a problem by kicking people out of this hotel. And I don't know how to, in this process, I don't know how to interject that kind of concern. Before you sign a contract, we should know if people are living there. We're not solving anything if we're just kicking people out of a place that they're living. So I don't know if you have a suggestion of how we make sure that's.
Mr. Malika, do you want to address this? I think it's a good question. It's a question that I had the opportunity to ask earlier as well.
Yeah, yes, I appreciate that concern and that question. So currently right now, through our coalition of providers, we're not aware of people that are accessing our homeless response system that are staying in that space. What I will say is if we do go in and see that there are folks that are in need of greater assistance there, they will not be asked to leave that space if there's a long-term need for that space, and we'll work to triage anyone living in that space to get them on the path to a more permanent housing option for them. So it won't be that they'll immediately be asked to leave, and we certainly have no desire to create the homelessness within this that displacement that works against all of our the work that we're currently doing to end homelessness in our community. So I think it's a very good question, and we in other times that this has been done, you go in and do an audit of who's staying here and why are they there. If we have folks that are on long-term leases there that have been or long-term stays, we talk to them and help them access resources that might help end their end their sort of precarious situation.
Thank you.
Yep.
I just want to state a concern that I have broadly about this process. We have a homelessness crisis that we're trying to address, and we need to make some investments. We are operating within a real estate market that works very quickly, and so we have to make decisions if we want to buy properties on a pace that, as an elected official who would like us to have more engagement, is rather uncomfortable. And it's just a reality of what we have to do if we want to take existing space and transform it. And that's a very uncomfortable space for me right now with this process. I want us to find mechanisms, and I can see how the motel hotel is a good option, but I'm struggling with the speed with which we need to do it while recognizing why we need to do that. And so I really do want to underscore that our staff need, even if we authorize this today, that some more diligence needs to be done before we jump forward with this. And I'm just struggling with how we make that be the right decision moving forward.
Okay. I appreciate you coming down and talking, and the concerns that you raise are not dissimilar from concerns that I hear from others as different locations in the city are discussed, and I think that those concerns that I've heard are real as well. If we're going to fundamentally change situation of homelessness in our community, it's going to require us to find and place housing in our city. So it's something that we have to do. But the concerns that you've raised, I think, it's incumbent upon the city to address and be really deliberate and mindful and top of mind about the concerns that you raise. And I also concur with the points that were raised by the points made by Councilmember Tovo. And to that, I would only add that I hope that with a focus on this area in this way, that conditions out there actually improve for the community. I think that this council has had those conversations about the arch and changing conditions around that area. And I think if you go out there now, you'll see some of that activity and that progress being evidenced with respect to the open air drug and crime situation that exists. The only thing that I would add, I know that you're in Councilmember Renteria's district, and I know that you'll have continued contact with him on this. But I promise you personally that I will come out there as this opens to be with you on site regularly so that we can talk about whether or not the concerns that you're expressing today are realizing, or if there are things that we can identify that I can assist you in our city in making sure happen. But I will be available and with you at that site. Any further discussion on the dais? Councilor Kitchen.
I just want to circle back around to, I understand this to be the same model that we've been talking about, and we've said some of that as part of this conversation, so I just want to repeat it. And that is that this is a place that people are referred to, are connected to social service, healthcare, and other help that they may need, with the goal of helping them find more permanent housing. So that's what we're talking about today. It's a place that people to go through, not to. And I wanted to emphasize that. It is true that there's been some conversation about perhaps in the future this could be turned into more permanent housing, but that is not what we're moving forward with today. If we do proceed down that road, then the kind of questions that Councilmember Tovo has asked will need to be addressed. At this point in time, my understanding is we're moving forward with the model that we've talked about before, which is a place for people to go through and not to. There's no drop-in, and the services are available to those who are there. And then we have in place what we talked about in terms of how the area around the shelter is handled from a camping perspective. With that said, I do echo what my colleagues have said. I think that there's an opportunity here to be more proactive as a city to address what you've brought to our attention in terms of the drug market that's occurring at those other locations that are near there. And I would ask the city manager and our staff to take a look at those locations along with APD to see what additional kinds of action might be taken on the part of the city. So I think that that's really important. So I just wanted to make that clear. Thank you.
Okay. We have a motion and a second on items 95, 96, and 97. Let's take a vote. Those in favor of these items, please raise your hand. Those opposed, it's unanimous in the dais. Those three items pass. Thank you for coming down.